Nelson Mandela was born on 18 July 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa, and died on December 5, 2013 in Johannesburg. He was a black nationalist and the first black president of South Africa. Together with F.W. de Klerk, were jointly awarded the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1993 for their effort that helped the end of South African apartheid system of racial segregation and ushered in a peaceful transition of majority rule. Join me today for the third episode of the first season of African Legends as we look the life of the first black president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. Please subscribe to our channel as we move forward to bring you a quality content. Thank you. Nelson Mandela was son of Chief Henry Mandela of Madiba clan of the Xhosa-speaking Tembu people. Henry was a polygamist and had 4 wives, 4 sons and 9 daughters. Nelson Mandela's mother was Henry's third wife. Mandela grew up with his 2 sisters and mother in village of Kunu, where he tended herds as a cattle boy and spent much of his time with boys. Both of his parents were illiterate, but since his mother was a devout Christian, she sent him for a Methodist school at age of 7. He was baptized as a Methodist and was given a name Nelson by his teacher. At age of 9, his father died in Kunu village when he came to live with them in Kunu. Mandela's mother took him to the palace of Mkekezweni, where he was entrusted the guardianship of the Tebu regent, Chief Jongitaba Dalindyebo. Here he felt that he was treated well by the chief and his wife. He attended Methodist Mission School located next to the palace, where he learned English, Xhosa, history and geography. At age of 16, he, together with several boys, underwent circumcision ritual that symbolized their transition from boys to men. In order to gain skills needed to become a privy councillor of the Thembu Royal House, he began his secondary school in 1933 at Clarkback Methodist High School. He completed his junior certificate in 2 years, and in 1937 he moved to Town, the Methodist College in Fort Beaufort. With the help of Chief Jongintaba, Mandela began to work on a bachelor degrees at University of Fort Hare. He studied English, anthropology, politics and Roman Dutch law in his first year. He was suspended from the university after he organized a boycott against the quality of food and never returned for his degree. In 1943, Mandela chose to follow a political path as a lawyer rather than to become a councillor in Thembuland. He began studying law at the University of the Witwatersrand and was the only black African student and faced racism. He met Sizulu and joined African National Congress and spent time with other activists including his friend Oliver Tambo. Mandela approached ANC President Alfred Bitini Zuma to propose for the formation of the Youth League, and on Easter Sunday 1994, African National Congress Youth League was formed with Lebede as president and Mandela as a member of its executive committee. He met Evelyn Massey, a trainee nurse and ANC activist from Nkobo Transkei, whom he met at Sizulu House. He married her in October 1944. In February 1945, they had a child named Madiba Thembekile, and in 1947, they had a daughter named Makaziwe, but died 9 months later of meningitis. In 1947, Lebende died and his position was taken by Peter Mda and appointed Mandela as ANCYL secretary. Later, he was elected as the executive committee of ANC in Transvaal province branch. Mandela and his party started advocating direct action against apartheid, such as boycott and strike towards the newly elected government of Daniel Francisco Malan. Zuma did not support these measures and he was removed from presidency in a vote of no confidence and was replaced by James Moroka. In 1950, Mandela took place of Zuma in ANC, and on the same year, he became the president of ANCYL. In April 1952, he started to work at H.M. Basner Law Firm, which was owned by a communist. In 1952, ANC organized a joint defiance campaign apartheid with Indian and communist group. In June 1952, Mandela addressed a crowd of 10,000 people, initiating the campaign protest for which he was arrested and was interned briefly at Marshall Square Prison. In August 1953, Mandela and Thabo opened their own law firm called Mandela and Thabo, operating in downtown Johannesburg. It was popular and the only black firm in South Africa, and often dealing with police brutality. Mandela was a part of Johannesburg's elite black middle class and gained much respect from the black community. His daughter Makaziwe Fuma was born in 1954. He concluded that violent action will prove to the end of apartheid after his protest to prevent forced relocation of all black people from Sophiatown of Johannesburg failed. In 1955, he was involved in drafting of Freedom Charter, a document calling for non-racial social democracy in South Africa. Mandela's anti-apartheid activism made him frequent target for the authorities. From 1952, he was severely restricted in travel, association and speech. In December 1956, he was arrested with more than 100 people on charges of treason that was designed to harass anti-apartheid activists. He went on trial that year and eventually was acquitted in 1961. After a massacre of unarmed black South Africans by police force at Sharpeville in 1960, the ANC was banned. Mandela abandoned his non-violent stance and began advocating acts of sabotage against South Africa's regime. He went underground and was one of the founders of Umkhonto weSizwe, which means Spear of the Nation, a military wing for ANC. In 1962, he went to Algeria for training of guerrilla warfare and sabotage. He returned to South Africa later that year. On August 5th, shortly after his return, he was arrested at a roadblock in Natal. He was subsequently sentenced to 5 years in prison. In October 1963, the imprisoned Mandela and several men were tried for sabotage, treason, and violent conspiracy in infamous Rivonia trial, where raiding police had discovered quantities of armed and equipment at the headquarters of the underground Umkhonto weSizwe. Mandela admitted some of charges made against him and was a classic defense of liberty and defiance of tyranny. On June 12, 1964, he was sentenced to life imprisonment, escaping a death penalty. He was transferred from Pretoria to prison in Robben Island and remained there for 18 years. In 1965, while in prison, he started working in lime quarry, and at night he worked on his LLB degree, which he was obtaining from the University of London through a corresponding course with Wolsey Hall, Oxford. Initially, he was permitted one visit and one letter every 6 months. While in prison, he was visited with many official visitors. Ellen Suzman was amongst the visitors that visited him. Dennis Ali of British Labour Party met him in 1970, while South African Minister of Justice Jimmy Kruger met him in 1974. His mother visited him in 1968 but died shortly after the visit. His firstborn Thembi also died the same year following a car accident. Mandela was not allowed to attend both funerals. His wife Winnie was not able to see him because she was often in prison for political activities. His daughter too visited him. In 1975, Mandela became a Class A prisoner, which allowed him a greater number of visitors and letters. In 1980, he resumed his LLB degree. In 1982, Mandela was transferred to Poolsmoor prison in Tokai, Cape Town. In December 1988, Mandela was moved to Victor Verster prison. Meanwhile, in 1989, Botha suffered a stroke and was replaced by F.W. de Klerk. In November 1989, de Klerk called his cabinet together to discuss the release of Mandela. On 11th February 1990, Mandela was released. Mandela immersed himself in official talks to end white minority rule, and in 1991 was elected as ANC president to replace his friend Oliver Tambo. In 1993, Mandela and President F.W. de Klerk were jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. On 27 April 1994, he voted for the first time, and on 10 May 1994, he was inaugurated as South Africa's first democratically elected president. He married his third wife Graca Machel on his birthday in 1998. Although the South African constitution allowed a president to serve at 2 consecutive 5-year terms, Mandela had never planned to stand for the second term in office. He gave his farewell speech to Parliament on 29 March 1999, after which he retired in June 1999. Mandela became more vocal in criticizing Western powers, such like he strongly opposed the 1999 NATO intervention in Kosovo. In 2003, he spoke on plans for US to launch a war in Iraq and many more. In June 2004, he announced that he was retiring from public life due to failing of his health. He met many leaders including US Senator Hillary Clinton, President George Bush, then Senator Barack Obama. Also encouraged Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe to resign over growing human rights abuse in his country, and in 2007 he spoke publicly against Mugabe to ask him to resign. In 2004, he campaigned for South Africa to host the 2010 FIFA World Cup and made his final public appearance during the World Cup closing ceremony. In February 2011, Mandela was briefly hospitalized with a respiratory infection before he was readmitted for a lung infection and gallstone removal in December 2012. In June 2013, his lung infection worsened and he was readmitted to Pretoria Hospital in serious condition. In September 2013, Mandela was discharged from hospital, although his condition remained unstable. After suffering a prolonged respiratory infection, Mandela died on 5th December 2013 at age of 95 at his home in Hongton, surrounded by his family. The state funeral was held on 15 December 2013 in Kunu.